Explain the mailing bot to me right now.
Mailing has the ability to set up keywords to return specific assets.
Yeah, I actually added a new keyword to her. Do you want to see?
What did you add? Oh my god. Is this the 4K thing you added?
Nah, doesn't matter. Convince people watching the video to enter the server right now.
What? You didn't tell me you're recording. Hey.
Sarcus. Women. Sarcus women. Truly a delightful combination of words that result in some of the most beautiful sights you'll ever see. And the newest addition to this small piece of heaven is Nasti. But it's not just the looks that make her so interesting. Her kit also has some very out there mechanics in it, making Nasti one of the most interesting ops to talk about because of how surprisingly well she fits with some of the best ops we have right now, as well as many of the future ones we'll get. And since you had a limited banner not too long ago, if you want to guarantee this beautiful potential woman, you might want to pull out your wallet, since you're probably drained from that. But if you're not that interested in going completely bankrupt while doing that, then there's really only one place for you to go, which is Loot Bar, the best platform to top up in gacha games. In there you can buy all the pulls you want to guarantee your Nasti at a discounted price, and the option for you to self-top up, but that way no one gets your account credentials. All of that with a 24/7 customer service, full refund guarantee, and a 4.9 score on Trustpilot with more than 45k reviews and tons of positive comments, so there's no need to worry about if you'll get your stuff or not. So make sure to use my link in either the description or pinned comment for a 6% discount to guarantee your Nasti. It can go as low as 23% cheaper than buying in-game when you add everything up. I'm very grateful to Loot Bar for sponsoring this video, so now let's get back to Nasti to show why her kit is so unique, starting with S1. Nasti is an artificer, the archetype that deploys devices to buffer ops. That's why her talent 1 is literally the same as Stainless. At 2 it simply gives her 3 support devices once deployed, all with a different effect depending on which skill you bring her with. So her game plan is basically to drop her on field and use them to buffer ops, which is where S1 comes in. If you played Arknights for a while, then you probably expect S1 to be the simplest skill in her kit that gets overshadowed by the others, since that is what usually happens with 6 stars. And you wouldn't be much wrong in thinking that. The buffs it gives are what you see right now. First, you'll grant herself plus 80% attack and defense and begin to attack enemies equal to block count. These are more of nice bonus effects, but it gets more interesting when you see what the devices do. The first thing isn't written anywhere in her kit for god knows what reason, but when you deploy them without the skill being active, they'll just grant plus 25% defense to the op in front of them. It's a small buff so they aren't 100% useless off skill. While S1 is active though, the op getting buffed by them will get plus 1 block and plus 55% defense, and the devices will also start losing 2% of their max HP per second until the skill ends. You'll also get 1 device when activating the skill. As you can see, very basic stuff. The good thing about it is that you can stack the devices to increase the buff amount. The bad thing is that there's a cap to how many devices you can deploy, which in her case is 2, so at most you're gonna get a plus 110% defense increase on the targeted op, which is slightly better than Shining's S3, except that not really, because Shining also increases ops based defense and can do that to everyone inside her range instead of being limited to 1 or 2 characters like Nasti. The only thing this skill has over her then is the block count increase, which can stack up to plus 2, but being on year 7 of this game, you can probably imagine that doesn't do much. In a world where you have Monster giving attack and attack speed, or Haruka with her 30% damage reduction, both also doing a ton of healing for free, getting a block count increase won't do much in comparison. There is still value in S1. For example, the most recent boss where this is actually really good would be the Bear, since high defense is the perfect counter against him. But with her having other more unique skills and other ops like Shiny, Neon or OG Hoshiguma already being able to cover for that, this skill isn't really worth using for most people.
Yeah, and then you keep spamming Ablana's feet. Eventually, Mailing will get drunk and she has a 10% chance to ignore what you selected and give a different output. There you go.
Benny, get back to work.
Counters you. He's
Benny.
drunk
Benny! Hey, get back to work, Billy. Keep showing me Ablana's feet. And so we get to S2. The last section was extremely short, mainly because Nasti's talent 1 can be summarized in 3 words, those being she has devices. But now her kit starts branching out a bit more, starting with talent 2. The first thing it does is give Nasti 10% Sanctuary, which for those who don't know means 10% damage reduction. And that gets further upgraded by the second part, which makes when a ranged enemy appears on the map, the effect increases to a 15% Sanctuary and additionally starts giving her 1 SP every 6 seconds, so she gets even more tanky and even gains an SP battery. But the most important part of it is that after the ranged enemy appears, Nasti will also expand this talent to also work on every ranged op you deploy on field, meaning she gives a global 15% damage reduction and SP battery to every ranged op in your team. This is a very good addition to her kit, since for a very easy to fulfill condition, that being a ranged mob being on field and ranged mob just meaning an enemy that can attack ranged ops, are able to give very universally good buffs to a very big selection of characters. The weakness quote-unquote of this talent is honestly just the numbers. 15% is very good for an almost unconditional damage reduction, but since this is Sanctuary, it can stack with other ops that also give the same buff, like for example Haruka, who is a very popular op that gives 30% Sanctuary. So if you bring both, Nasti's buff will get overwritten by Haruka since she has the stronger one. And the SP battery is also in a similar position. 1 SP every 6 seconds means she gives around 0.17 SP per second. For comparison, that's a bit over half of what Tolopsis gives to your entire team on E2 without even taking her module into account. Though this time it's a bit better than the Sanctuary, because this battery can actually stack with other batteries like Tolopsis herself, since it's not the same type of buff as hers. But overall, this is a very good talent. Those weaknesses are more of nitpicks, and especially when I get to S3, it'll make a lot more sense why they designed it this way. Which then brings us to S2. And the first thing to note here is not the skill itself, but actually the devices, since the skill makes them have 8 total max HP, which is the lowest value between all of her skills. If you're worried they might easily die because of that, then don't really bother, since the devices are quite literally immune to any form of damage that doesn't come from the skill itself. It's worth noting the Hypergriff also made so when you deploy a device on S2, they'll have an initial HP of 3 and give them a skill that costs 5 SP and heals them for 1 HP though, meaning that they take around 25 seconds to fully heal and get to the 8 HP I mentioned. Well, that's how we finally get to S2. What it does is make so when a device on field will start taking 1 damage every 0.5 seconds, but in return that same device will also give 1 SP and a barrier equal to 5% of Nasti's max HP on the same rate as they take damage to whatever op is in front of it. After that, the skill will also grant you 1 device when it ends. That's the reason why HP is subtly important to these things. It serves as a limiter to how much SP and barrier Nasti can give per device, because just like how enemies can't damage them, you also are unable to heal them in return. And the skill lasts for 4 seconds, so when you do the math you'll see that 1 damage every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds equals 8 total damage, which is exactly how much max HP they have. Meaning that each device can only give 8 SP per activation, and since you can only have 2 on field each time, S2 caps are giving 16 SP per cycle. And the problems here come mostly because of that limit, more specifically because the skill damages the devices. Starting with what I said about them having 3 HP on deploy. The reason S2 does that is to nerf her heli drop potential, since if you activate it before they're fully healed, the devices will give less SP. Another problem that comes with that is actually in the long run of a stage, because S2 only gives you 1 device per proc, and it's only after it's over, so after just 3 activations you will run out of them and only be able to use 1 per proc from then on, basically cutting in half how much SP and barrier each activation gives. But with all that being said, this is actually a pretty great skill. A lot of people look at how she can't heli drop devices well, or how her SP recovery gets gimped later on and brush this one off. But the true strength of this skill is not the SP recovery. It's not even the barrier she gives, it's both of them combined with the extremely short cycle it has. If you just want an SP battery, I wouldn't really recommend S2, especially because Stainless's S2 is much better at it in almost every aspect. But being able to give up to 2.4k HP as a barrier to any op on field, on top of receiving 1 for herself on such a short cycle, on top of the SP, can be very strong if you know what you're doing. As such, Nasti really shines as an utility op to increase the survivability of your characters, especially when you take into account the 15% damage reduction she gives on her talent too. Because of those, Nasti can be a surprisingly great sustainer for ops in risky positions while also giving the SP on top of it. In fact, the way some people use her in more niche clears is a lot more because of her barrier than the SP part, with Tragoide being a good example since you can combine his great numbers impairment application with her really fast cycle of barriers to to stall a lot of things. The only real problem with it is that does make us to a more high ceiling skill. If you don't know what you're doing, then you can't really take advantage of what it does. And especially if you're just bringing her on a normal team, then all that strength will get diluted in the middle of all the broken knobs this game has. It stays then as a more niche recommendation for me. If you're pulling Nasti because you enjoy her gameplay style, I think you can definitely find more use for it. It's more of a niche skill in an already niche job, but one that can definitely work in your favor if you want.
What is that? What is Nastis 3? What? What is this? Is this super suggestion?
No, it's mine.
What's this Crown Slayer one? Slayer. Okay.
This was super suggestion.
Okay.
Lastly, then we have S3. If you follow a bit of CN of releases, then this is definitely the skill you've seen her using the most. And for a good reason, since S3 quite literally breaks the rules of the game and lets you deploy a ranged op in almost any tile you want, as you can see. But this skill has actually quite a lot going on in how it works, with a ton of synergies baked into it. The way it works is that when you have S3 equipped, her devices will change once again and cost 6 SP. But this time, instead of being able to buff your ops like the other two skills, whenever you use a device, if the tile ahead of them is a deployable ground tile without any LS deployed on it, they'll spawn this box there. And just by itself this thing doesn't do anything. But if you click on it, you'll see that it has a 50 SP cost skill, and this is where the device's second role comes in. The only way to charge the skill of this box is to have at least one device deployed pointing right at it. When you do that, you'll see that they can charge 1 SP per second. And when it's fully charged, the box will become a ranged tile that can both block one enemy as well as allow you to deploy ranged ops on it. Like I said, a bit more than just can deploy ranged ops on ground. And if this was all, then it would be a bit lacking, since waiting 50 seconds to have it built is quite a lot of time. But first of all, you can drop one more device to help building it before hitting the deploy cap, so it's more like 28 seconds to fully charge it after you account for the 6-second cooldown. And second of all, this is just the device's skill, and S3 does help her build the platform even faster, which is how we finally get to what it does. And after all that long explanation about the platform, S3 is surprisingly simple, as you can see. All it does is give Nasti plus 160% attack and defense and doubles the amount of SP and HP the devices can give the platform. The stat buffs are just like S1, more of nice bonuses than anything. As for the double SP the devices can give the platform, that's really good to make it come out faster. It takes 28 seconds to fully build it without this skill and reduces it to 18 seconds. That's the basic of how S3 works, but like I said at the start, there is still a bit more to it. For example, the platform doesn't just let you deploy ranged ops on it, but as you can see on S3's description, it can even be further upgraded after it's built. The way these upgrades works is that after being fully built, the platform will still have the same 50 SP skill, and if you leave the devices there charging it, it will get additional effects up to 2 times. These upgrades are very simple really. Basically, when you deploy an op on the platform without any extra upgrades, they will receive a plus 20% max HP and attack at base for free. After that, for each upgrade, they will receive an additional 20% max HP and attack. So on a fully upgraded platform, they'll get an extra 60% attack and max HP just for being on top of it. Not only that, but the platform itself will get stronger with each upgrade. At a base level, it already has a very high HP of 4150, 25 res and 385 defense. But each upgrade will give an additional 1k HP, 100 defense and 5 res, so by the end they'll have all the stats you see on screen and be much harder for ground mobs to kill. And as a bonus, when fully upgraded, the platform will remain on field even after you retreat Nasti. That's not something you should really do, since without the devices you can't heal it unless you have indirect healing like bards, but it is a nice measure to have in case anything happens and she dies. These upgrades are simple like I said, but very busted. More specifically the attack and HP ones. They work really well with ranged units. More specifically, I want to highlight Prem Alter. If you watched my video on her around a month ago, you know she is very squishy when on skill, so the extra extra HP from the platform and the damage reduction from Nasti's talent really help her survivability. And when we get to the attack buff, it gets even better because Primal still doesn't have an attack increase, so she works really well with anyone that can give her that since it won't get diluted by it. Not only that, but her snow tiles also deal damage based on her attack, so Nasti can make them even more deadly. And the cherry on top is the extra speed from Talent 2, since that can help with the long wind-up time from Manix S2. And surprisingly enough, it's still not over, because this platform doesn't just work with ranged ops, but quite a few ground ones can also take advantage of it. For example, one of the future ops we'll get is Chen Alter. Her S3 has the dragon mechanics from Yu's event, the same one you see in some IS6 stages, and in her case it works by turning right every time it hits a wall. Normally this means that this skill can be very restricted in some maps since it's quite literally tied to map design, but since the platform is considered a ranged style, it can also be used as a wall to redirect the dragon, which does open a lot of possibilities for that skill. We also have Lazy's S3, since that skill also likes having walls nearby to bounce her spheres back into the enemy, so you can also combo that with Nasti to expand the amount of tiles where she's good at. Another op is Zima Alter. Her mechanic on S3 is that she can send shockwaves through ranged tiles to either increase her damage or reach further away mobs you wouldn't normally hit, so you can also pair the platform with her. Almost every single 6-star released after her can synergize with this platform. Of course, some are minor synergies like Wang being able to get more damage and better cycling, but others are a lot more significant like Chalter Alter and her dragon. But of course, S3 also has its weaknesses, and the first will be the time it takes to build the platform. This isn't that big of a deal for general gameplay since 18 seconds is not that long, but it not being instant can make it awkward in some situations. For example, if you want to pair her with Chalter Alter so her dragon gets trapped inside the small area, you do need to time it right so it doesn't just lock it out of it instead. In these cases, I actually recommend you let it charge until 49 SP and retrieve the device as charging it. Then it will remain 1 SP away from being complete and you can just deploy a device on it when you feel like it. Another thing is after the platform is deployed, since Nasti's job is kinda over after it. You can even undeploy her and it will remain there if it's fully upgraded, so she becomes more of a bother after doing her thing, since all she gives after that are the buffs from Talent 2. And then we have the last problem with it, which is a bit difficult to explain because one of the things that makes S3 good is also one of its weaknesses, her potential. See, this skill isn't exactly smooth. I mean, you have to deploy a device that then needs another tile in front of it to be free for it to then start building the platform from scratch to then finally be able to deploy something on it. And on top of that, there's a big restriction of only being able to have one per map. Because of that, some of the synergies I mentioned don't really fit as well as you'd expect. Lazy, for instance, does benefit from having another wall to bounce her spheres, but as you can see right now, only one isn't enough to cover for all of them in every situation. So in this case, you see, I just used a ton of resources to get a worse result than if I'd simply deployed her on another tile. Same thing with Zima. I said she deals more damage if you have more walls nearby, but just like Eliza, she benefits from having a lot of them to send her shockwaves. So again, because you're limited to one, the damage increase isn't that big, which means you're just using more resources and having to deal with building the platform for a worse result than if you had simply used a buffer. Nasti is not like Monster, for instance, where you can just slap her with almost 10 DPS and get a monstrillion extra damage. S3 requires setup, maintenance so the platform isn't destroyed, and a lot of its potential will remain being just that. Potential, since its restrictions will stop a lot of people from realizing it. And if you're inside IS, basically everything she gives is replaced with just relics. If you want more speed, there's like 5 different ones for that, there are a bunch of others that help with survivability, and if you want to deploy a ranged op anywhere in the map, then this one literally allows you to do that without any setup. Overall, this is a very strong skill, don't get me wrong. The synergy problems I mentioned are more for ground ops, which aren't her ideal partners anyway since they can't receive all her extra buffs. Just don't think that because she technically synergizes with almost every future 6-star that it'll be perfect smooth synergy for everyone, but especially if you do manage to find a use for those more creative combos, or even if you just use it to deploy a ranged op on it because of the buffs, it will be very useful in a lot of cases. Overall, Nasti is a great op. Every single one of her skills has some some value. Some more than others, and for S2 specifically, its value might require more strategy from your part, but they do work very well nonetheless, and she can definitely be of great value to you, with that value tended to only increase in the future. But if you ask me if you should pull her or not, it's a bit of a complicated question to answer because of S3. That is her most unique skill, and it can be very useful to you, especially if they keep releasing ops that synergize with it. But with our timeline, we're not that far away from the next limited banner, which features the next big DPS op that will probably define the meta for the next year or two. And because of all that, I do think Nasti is more of a luxury pull if you're thinking about meta. Her potential is definitely there, but some people really exaggerate how well Nasti works with some ops. If you want to, you can make it happen, but she's not required at all and it might not be as smooth as you expect. So for some people, she might just remain as potential woman if you pull just thinking about being able to redirect, change, alters dragon. So I just recommend pulling Nasti if you either like her playstyle, want to play around with her synergies, have a lot of pulls to spare, or just have really good taste. Otherwise, you can afford to skip her. Comment what you think of Nasti though, or if you want to have a civilized discussion about her, you can also join my new Discord server. Just make sure to leave a like and subscribe before you go. And if you want to support me, get early access to videos, a Discord role, or even appear on a Blunted special place, you can also consider becoming a member. I also think you're really cool if you do that. That's it then. Bye.
仕上げにもう一度確認をしておこう。我々にとって完璧とは単なる合格に過ぎない。